Well, as you just heard from Mary, Prince William and Harry paid tribute to their grandfather today, calling him master of the barbecue, legend of banter and an extraordinary man. It comes as mourners in the capital continue to pay their respects at both Buckingham Palace and Windsor Castle. And London MPs shared memories in the Commons. Our political correspondent Simon Harris reports.
At the entrance to Windsor Castle, the Queen's household wardens were on duty. 5 days from now, all eyes will be on Windsor when Prince Philip is laid to rest. But today there were only a few sightseers. The Binnell family from Birmingham came here on a detour.
So we're off to Legoland because it's the first day for it to open, and we thought that we'd pop here first to pay our respects.
On Saturday, the day of the funeral, the town is hoping for no visitors.
We need to make sure that we don't spread this nasty infection, and we are encouraging everybody to pay their respects from their homes.
Both Prince William and Prince Harry remembered their grandfather in written statements. The Duke of Cambridge said, "My grandfather was an extraordinary man and part of an extraordinary generation. I will miss my grandpa, but I know he would want us to get on with the job." The Duke of Sussex said, "To me, like many of you who have lost a loved one or grandparent over the pain of this past year, he was my grandpa, master of the barbecue, legend of banter and cheeky right till the end." While preparations for Saturday's funeral continued behind the castle walls, in Westminster, a special sitting of the House of Commons allowed MPs to pay tribute to the Duke. The Prime Minister spoke of Prince Philip's embrace of all things modern.
He was one of the first people in this country to use a mobile phone.
Others had memories of the Duke of Edinburgh's award.
One of the many success stories of the Duke of Edinburgh Awards is the work that goes on at the Westminster House Youth Club in my constituency of Camberwell and Peckham. They get more black and minority ethnic young people through the awards than almost anyone else.
When the Duke came to my group, he asked us what new skill we'd learnt. I told him proudly I had learnt to drive. So the Duke asked, with 4 or 6 horses.
Windsor's MP recalled their first encounter.
And I was terribly nervous, and I think you could see that. I wasn't quite sure what to say, I wasn't sure of the protocol, and he walked straight over to me, looked me in the eye and said, "So, how's life in that madhouse?" And it was so unexpected that I just burst out laughing.
A sign outside Buckingham Palace reinforced the official view that flowers and tributes should not be left. But throughout the day, a stream of visitors brought bouquets and messages. Simon Harris, ITV News.
Good evening. Just 24 hours ago, the capital was celebrating the easing of lockdown and the road to normality. But late last night came the reminder that we're still not out of the woods yet. Surge testing has begun in Wandsworth and Lambeth after 44 cases of the South African COVID variant was identified in the area. So to try and stop the spread, more than 650,000 residents are being asked to come forward for testing. It's the largest surge testing operation so far, as our political correspondent Simon Harris reports.
The queue on Clapham Common wasn't for a table at a bar or restaurant, but for a COVID test. It followed the extraordinary call for everyone in 2 South London boroughs to take part in surge testing. The authorities are trying to contain 44 confirmed and 30 probable cases of the South African variant of the disease.
I've been queuing about an hour now, and it's fine. I mean, it's civic duty, so it's the right thing to do.
I wish it wasn't necessary, but it's important.
Everyone in Lambeth has got to get tested, so you may as well do it when you can.
I'm happy to do so.
Like drinking or eating out, the testing here was in the open air. More than 650,000 people live in Lambeth and Wandsworth, and the NHS wants as many as possible over the age of 11 to get a test. This is the largest surge test so far. It was ordered after around 30 residents and staff in a Lambeth care home tested positive for the South African variant. Another smaller cluster was found in a school in Wandsworth. Outside Lambeth Town Hall, there were more queues. Some were waiting for a test on the spot, others wanted home testing kits.
It's a bit scary, it's a bit nerve-wracking, but I think as long as everyone keeps on the trajectory of getting tested and everyone's, being careful about that, then I think it's fine.
I got the news last night that everyone in Lambeth needed a test, so I've come to collect some for me and my household.
I now know that I can go and test myself, my family, just to make sure that if we haven't got it, then, it'd be over the moon that we haven't got it and we ain't going to pass it on to other people.
The testing programme was announced just hours after the latest easing of lockdown rules, but health officials insisted there was no reason to adjust the lockdown roadmap.
We're reassured that our case numbers are going down, but what we're trying to make sure is that nothing changes that. So this is a way of checking that we're on top of the situation and that we won't see any surge due to a new variant popping up. So this is absolutely about making sure that we can continue on that roadmap and continue to ease lockdown.
Lambeth and Wandsworth are densely populated parts of London's inner city. The South African variant poses a threat because it may not respond as well to vaccines.
We do need to be really careful that this variant doesn't start rising in number in the community. It's particularly important as we roll out vaccination because we really want to preserve the effectiveness of these vaccines. And we know that the effectiveness of vaccines in preventing at least mild to moderate disease is lower with this particular variant.
The South London surge test is expected to last 2 weeks. Simon Harris, ITV News, Clapham.
But first to the mayoral election now, and from anti-vaccine manifestos to self-described idiots, there are a record-breaking 20 candidates fighting for your vote with a huge variety of views and opinions. Over the next few weeks, we'll hear from all of them. Our political correspondent Simon Harris has spoken to 4 of those hoping to run City Hall.
Harvey Jonathan David, commonly known as Count Binface, independent, 69.
He's not in it for votes, he's in it for laughs, which is just as well. In 2019, John Harvey stood against Boris Johnson in Uxbridge. Now the man with a dustbin on his head has joined the race to be the next London mayor.
I believe that British democracy is a very special thing, and also British humour is a great thing, and that democracy has been under threat in many ways, and I think it's fantastic that even now in 2021, we still can have idiots like me standing for election.
But most candidates are deadly serious.
Thank you very much for coming to Walthamstow today.
Piers Corbyn is the brother of Jeremy Corbyn, the former Labour leader. He made his name 25 years ago as a long-range weather forecaster.
I'm standing to be mayor to end all these lockdowns, the destruction of jobs and...
That's not in the mayor's gift?
Well, the mayor has control of the Metropolitan Police.
And the chances are you're not going to be mayor, are you?
We would be saying to the Metropolitan Police, do not implement these rules.
Going up against well-known and well-funded political parties is a formidable challenge.
The minor parties and independent candidates all have one thing in common. They're relying on the power of social media to attract voters.
I'm Cam, and I'm running to be your next mayor of London.
Cam Balayev hopes his campaign videos will do the trick. He's a business consultant who was born in Azerbaijan. He's standing for the Renew Party and wants to take on global tech giants.
On day one, I will start negotiating a fair deal for Londoners with the big tech, because at the moment, our data is being used without our consent.
But the mayor has no power to do that.
He's got a lot of indirect emotional powers to do that. I can't do it alone. I have to team up with the 10 Downing Street.
Valerie Brown is a mother, grandmother and environmental activist. Her flagship policy is to replace politicians with citizens' assemblies.
By putting power in the hands of people, through these assemblies of people, you've got a cross-section of the society representative of the demographics of that society.
If you give power to the people, what's the point of having a mayor?
The details of all of this is something that will unfold when the time comes.
The candidates have had to pay a deposit of £10,000 to take part in the election. If they get fewer than 5% of the votes, they won't get their money back. Simon Harris, ITV News.
And here's a full list of candidates standing for London Mayor next month, which you can also find on our website. Just search for ITV London. Next tonight, Sally Jacobs from North London lost her husband Derek in 2019 after he was killed in an accident on a so-called smart motorway. He was hit by another vehicle after he was forced to stop when his van broke down. Since then, Sally has been campaigning against smart motorways, saying she doesn't want another family to experience her grief, as our political correspondent Simon Harris reports.
When Sally Jacobs' husband Derek left their North London home to drive to Yorkshire 2 years ago, there was no reason to think he wouldn't be back later that day. But on the M1, just south of Sheffield, his van blew a tyre. Because he was on a so-called smart motorway, there was no hard shoulder.
He got out the passenger side, and before he could get over the barrier, a car hit his van, crushing it onto him, I assume. The car then turned over and a coach hit the car. Nobody deserves to die that way.
Derek's death is one of a number which have prompted calls for smart motorways to be scrapped, but the government is committed to them. The M25 is already a smart motorway. There's a lane of traffic instead of a hard shoulder. Part of the M4 through West London and Berkshire is being converted at a cost of more than £800 million. Drivers we spoke to had their doubts.
You don't get to choose where you break down, and yet the government says wait another couple of miles to pull over to the side. You don't always get that choice.
You haven't very much choice. If there isn't a hard shoulder, you're just going to pile into the vehicles either side of you.
I've come close a few times myself to rear-ending something that's just stopped.
In March, the government published what it called an evidence stocktake, which recommended more refuge areas where drivers can pull over and radar systems which can spot stranded vehicles. In a statement, Highways England said, the government's evidence stocktake of the safety of smart motorways analysed a wealth of data and found that in most ways they're as safe as or safer than conventional motorways. We are committed to delivering the stocktake actions to further raise the bar on smart motorway safety.
We know that if a vehicle stops in the live lane, there is a more than 200% increase or risk in them being involved in a collision, and that is really, really worrying. Braking down at the best of times is a terrifying experience. You don't want to be doing that on a motorway, but if you do it in a live lane, for drivers that would be an absolutely terrifying experience.
Sally is now a campaigner against smart motorways.
You put on a brave face for everybody, but in your heart you die a little more every day without him.
The M4's makeover is due to be complete at the end of next year. Current plans will see 800 miles of smart motorway in England by 2025.
And we can head to our Westminster studio now to speak to Simon ahead of the late debate tonight. Simon, what's on the programme?
I'll be joined in the studio by MPs from Beaconsfield, St Albans and Slough to talk about smart motorways and whether there needs to be a rethink. We'll also look at whether Monday's roadmap milestone, followed swiftly by surge testing in 4 London boroughs, raises the worrying prospect of local lockdown restrictions. And after a debate in the Commons today, should students be compensated for a wrecked academic year? That's the late debate here on ITV after news at 10.